And here we are, live in the Magin Rose half space for our monthly interview with. My name is Maggie Rose Cunningham. I am your hostess for the half space and for maginrose.com. And I'm really delighted to be welcoming the wonderful Erika Maisie. So please do say hello, Erika, so that people can see you for a moment.
Hi, Maggie. Hi, everyone who is watching. Thank you for this space for the conversation.
Yeah, I love doing these interviews with. They're always so fun, and although I have a plan of where we're going to go, it evolves as we go through. So Erika and I have been working together for a long time now, for many years. We bonded over the runes, and specifically over the birth runes, which we're going to be talking about a little bit more. And we've been working with the runes together. A lot of commonalities in our work as well around weird weaving and the relationship with the divine feminine in particular. And then with the birth runes, I think is where we've really found that place of connection. And you have been like one of my trailblazers. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. And talking about your work. I know that you are an author, you have wonderful offerings. We're going to be talking about those things too. So I wanted to say hello to everybody who is joining us live in the hearth space. So Erika and I, we're in our Zoom room together, and we're broadcasting into the hearth space. So if you have questions for Erika, post them in the chat box, and I will endeavour to keep an eye on the chat box so that I can pass your questions and comments and shares to Erika as we go through. But yes, well, I wanted to start, because it's the half space, and if we didn't start here, it would be wrong. Is just to ask you, Erika, when you first met the runes.
Oh gosh, when did I first meet the runes? I have to go back for a few years actually. And that's what brought us together, I guess. Before the runes, it was actually the symbolism. Yeah, those are the Slavic runes. Like I started reading the books called Anastasia by Vladimir Mikri books, where it's described how the sacred symbols in clothing are all interconnected, with everything. And it never left me since. It was like in 2017. And then briefly after reading those books and embroidering my destiny towel, which I always carry like my ritual cloth here, I kept deepening my relationship with those sacred symbols, and then my connection to destiny weavers. And then very briefly after that, the runes came to me through the nuns, especially. Then I contacted you for a birth runes report. Yeah, and that has changed my life ever since.
Yes, and as I remember it, when we connected, there was this sense for you of this journey of discovery that you were on, and that you had been on for some time, and that the birth runes offered you another pathway into that journey. And that is one of the things that has always inspired me so much about your work. I think we're going to talk a little bit about sacred embroidery, and I can see that you are wearing a piece that you've embroidered, and there's one there on the door as well. And it's the way in which through your journey you have really sought to actively trace your heritage, your ancestral heritage, your spiritual heritage, to understand it and to honor it. And that you have then taken that, and in a very real sense, in many different ways, you have woven what you have found into this beautiful living spiritual practice that just shines through. That is yours. That is yours, and that's why people connect with you. Well, certainly why, one of the reasons that I connect with you, other than that you're also a fabulous person and friend,
Oh,
is
thank
this
you.
sense of tracing but evolving at the same time. It's the sort of almost like the weaving together of the past and the present is what I would feel in your work. And I'd love to hear more about that. I know that you talk about that in your, I know mainly your first book, but I'd love to hear from you that sense of how did that come about, that you felt, yeah, I need to do this. And tell us a little bit about that story, because I think people would love to hear about that.
Yeah, the background to that is like that I felt always very uprooted. Like since my family left Kazakhstan, I'm actually born in Kazakhstan, and I lived there the first 9 years of my life before my family then immigrated to Germany, since my dad is of German origin, but was brought up in Siberia, where he then met my mom, who is of Ukrainian origin. Yeah, but that's how we came about then to live in Kazakhstan, where I was born. And since we moved to Germany, like for about 30 years, I always felt like I belong nowhere. Like I was always very uprooted, and yeah, so very depressed most of my life. I didn't know, yeah, where is my home? Everywhere where I lived, it was not my home. So it was always the search, how do I connect with my different ancestral roots, but in a way that I feel like I belong somewhere. Yeah. And that's how I came to these books about shamanism, special to this embroidery. And that's where I start to hear my calling, like of those dislocated threads. Yeah, where on a deep level, which I could not really comprehend, I knew I'm here for a reason. But how do I make sense of those, which felt to me knotted or fragmented threads all over the place? And that's where the embroidery was a very beautiful practice, and especially embroidering with women from my ancestral lineage, like from Siberia, from Kazakhstan and Mongolia. So that was like a conscious taking up of my lost threads, and slowly reweaving myself back to this symbolism, which came particularly from my ancestral lineage. And since my dad is also German, from German roots, that's how the runes came to me. Yeah. Yeah, a reweaving of the Germanic roots and the Slavic roots. Yeah, and this is for me the first book I wrote about. This is the weirding way, the mysterious art of weaving your own destiny. It's like consciously taking up the threads, which the Birth Runes report is such a beautiful, like for me, entry point. Yeah, which is really make it obvious and tangible, which runes weaving through me. Yeah, my unique soul tapestry, and the Norns, who have woven the whole web of wyrd. They became really tangible. What was intangible became really tangible. I could connect with those deities, with the energy, with the runes. And through the slow practice of embroidery in a conscious, purposeful way, it was just really like taking up my own destiny into my own hands. And now it becomes like the guidance becomes much clearer nowadays to me. Yeah, on my path. Yeah, since I know my birth runes.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to come to that, because it's such a powerful way of connecting into spiritual identity, to soul identity with the birth runes. But I think there is something so special about the way in which, you didn't just go, I'm going to research. You went on your travels, and you did embroidery work with women who had access to the heritage that you were looking for, and you brought that back. And I always think about that in terms of the creativity that comes with that. And you talked about the slowness in that as well, sort of allowing to integrate. And it reminds me when we do the Awaken to the Runes program, right at the beginning, I talked to people about the different types of fuel for their work. And we think about the Kenning hoard, this hoard of knowledge, and that we have fuel that's like paper that burns really quickly. And I often think about like reading a book as being something that fills us with inspiration in the moment. We go, this is amazing, and it comes in, but it's that expression that we find in the Keena's rune, that it's not just about it coming in. It is then the process of integrating it and expressing it outwards that creates that deep knowledge. And the fuel that is wood, and the fuel that is coal in particular, those, or peat, you might think about this sort of fuel that's taken time to create. And yeah, that patience and that act of sewing or weaving or working with the fabric arts in some way feels to me like an active invocation of the near, of the fates, which I really, really love. How did the Nornir show up for you? How did they go, "Hi, Erika, we're here"?
That's a great question. It was actually Vedanta, first of all. And it was interesting because I started to read about embroidery and actually embroider, to start with the Slavic embroidery. And it was like this, like, by holding the threads, it's just they came to me, like, because they're the weaving fates, and also Frigg, and all those weaving goddesses starting speaking to me. And this was like especially with Dante, from the Frinone, for the ones who may not know her. She is from the present, the nun of the present, and then there's Urt of the past and Skuld of the future. And it was especially Verdante. And I always receive my transmissions like in dreams. And when then I literally do my handcrafts of embroidery, then it's like a feeling, like impulse. And it was so funny that when I was also watching the Lord of the Rings, it was the goddess, how she called again, with G. I forgot her name.
Is she which is she an elf?
The elf queen. The elf. Yes, Galadriel. And it was like Verdante was speaking to her, to me. She I don't know, I always felt very connected, and it was like Verdante was speaking to her, to me. And it was this connection into the present moment, which embroidery also is a great help, which teaches me to always center in the moment, and that all the wisdom comes from the present moment by me focusing on the next stitch, and through that listening, I became like very sensible, especially to Vedante. And interestingly, like living more from the present moment and being very aware of to a certain symbolism which come to me, and impulses, intuitions, that's when things also show up, like, for example, the ancestral traumas and everything which come with it. But they also keep them showing up. And that's where also this very deep wisdom of the well of the weird and Urd, which is like an endless wisdom, of this feminine, has also started to come up as a natural process of this weaving of our destiny. So it's like a deep listening, and the embroidery is for me a tool to make the intangible tangible, where I literally feel it, like the transmissions is like, I become a channel, and then I can just feel it.
That act of becoming a channel is so important, I think. And When you talked about Galadriel, I could really feel that. And for people who have been watching the new series, which is, you know, Galadriel when she's in her warrioress phase, the way that I see it, and I know that there's some people who are saying that's not what Galadriel is like. And it's sort of like because she's in her youth phase in the I can't remember what it's called now. That's annoying me that I can't remember what it's called, but I watched it and loved it. But she is a different phase of her own evolution through the Lord of the Rings, isn't she? And it's that sense of that real long-sightedness and being centered in the present moment, whereas she has this fire of I must change things, I must prove myself, I must make up for my previous failures. There is a lack of like self-forgiveness in young Galadriel. And then Galadriel in the Lord of the Rings is in a different space, and it does feel, you're right, this Vathandi energy of being intensely in the present moment, you know, the intense way in which she receives the hobbits when they come and she sees people, and she sees them in her truth, is very much like Vathandi. I'm also reminded of Arwen, the elf who she embroiders the flag. If I remember rightly, it's like a black symbol on a black cloth, and it's a deeply magical act. And we know that that was something that has come down in stories about the Vikings in particular, and when they invaded Ireland, and this idea of the raven banners, you know, come up as well, these magical banners. And it reminds me of when I step out of doing my rune work, and as I work with Odin, you know, and it's the voice and it's the runes and it's the intention and it's the forging and all of these things, and move into a space of weaving or spinning. And you know, I've done seed work in that space. It is such a deeply magical act, but that is beyond words. And what you said about healing being possible from that space, like ancestral healing that can come through. I remember doing I was my sister's birth partner, and I sat with my spindle and span for her all the way through her labor, and then created a piece from the threads afterwards. But the way in which the spindle changed during the different phases of the labor, and when it was difficult, the skein would become knotted or frayed, and then when it eased, it would become easy as well. It's deep reflective magic that reflects back what's happening in the present moment when we sit in that stillness, is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah,
that sense that we're weaving from the present moment. Yeah, is what I'm hearing you speak of. I just want to sit in that now. I just feel like stopping, just going and getting my spindle. Are you, because I know that you'll do a lot of embroidery work. What other types of is that your main type of working? Because I can see obviously it is that sort of weaving of symbol, that stitching of symbol yes, into the cloth. How does that differ? Because I am not a good seamstress, so for me what you've done there is like, I'm just like, wow.
I've never been. It's actually like I never embroidered, and it just came to me, which is also very healing, to get rid of my perfectionist streak, because I'm actually former professional sportswoman, and coming from a communist country, it was all about just achievement and being perfect. Yeah. And the embroidery was also very healing. It was just like I just had to do it. And I'm far from being like a good embroiderer or something. That's not my goal. It's really the magic of becoming this open channel to receive guidance from the other world. And it just opens me up, and it opens the space where I can, I perceive it like seeing with 1,000 eyes. And yeah, it's like the true meaning of shaman, which come from Siberian. It is like seeing in the dark, or seeing the intangible, being the messenger to different dimensions. And for me, the embroidery was an opening for that. Yeah, where I can invite the certain spirit guides, like in Slavic tradition, I'm the raven, the wise one is my main energy. And it's really like this energy of the raven is being able to travel between the worlds and receive wisdom. It's like, that's why there's no coincidence against this. Odin has got his 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. And it's this energy, and embroidery was just my portal that came to me, that opens me up. But it's never about beauty as such or perfectionism. It's never my goal. It's really just to give it a form of these transmissions which I receive.
And I think that's true in voice work as well. It's certainly something that when I've worked with people before and we've explored voice work, that sense in which, and body work too, actually, that sense in which you can have song that is crafted and beautiful and perfect, and you rehearse it and then you perform it over and over. And that sort of sacred repetition is the way that I think about it. And you can also have dance that is like that is a performance in the moment. And you can have beautiful, embroidered, woven fabrics that are breathtaking. Those are acts of sacred repetition. And for me, what you're talking about is sacred play, which is movement, moving forward, evolving, changing, learning, knowing, bringing something new through. And Kinaz itself speaks of that. It speaks of, when we are in the negative energy of Kinaz, it becomes the perfectionist, that we never finish. We're always unpicking, we're always trying to change it and criticize it and critique it. But I learned in my voice work that actually when it sounds dissonant and weird is often when the biggest healing, the biggest shift in energy occurs. It's that sense of allowing what needs to come through without trying to be in control of it.
Exactly. And that was actually such a big freedom for me and relief to do things just to create space for to give it a form for so many things which I perceive. Like, I was always a very sensitive, fine-tuned person, but it was never supported, because I was a professional sportswoman. So only that was important, like I had nobody to support me with that. And only like the last few years, I've got now the tools, and those runes are fantastic for that, and the other magical symbols, and of course also my Siberian shamanic training, which I've been doing for many years. Is like, now I've got the tools, to make the intangible tangible, and just to create spaces for expression. And it's the same with my art, like with painting or writing books. It's never about like, oh, I want to be the best in this or something, or achieve anything with it. No, it's just to give it a voice, an expression for so many voices, transmissions I receive. And it feels very liberating. And I also feel now my ancestors so happy, that I'm just like giving it a voice, an expression. And this is the positive part of the ancestors' work. Of course, it's also a lot about healing of ancestral traumas, but primarily they are just so happy if we live our gifts forward, or being of service with what we came here for. And so those are the positive things which just come true. The more I let go of control of this, any kind of blocks or anything, and just become more of a channel. It feels very liberating.
And there is that sense of, which I definitely feel in your work, that sense of opening up. And when I use the word surrender, I always want to qualify it, because I think people think that by surrender it sounds like an army, that there's a moment we're admitting defeat. But for me, there is something, when we think about surrendering to ourselves, surrendering to what we feel inside and allowing that to come through. I always think of that as being an incredibly powerful act, because there is so much of us that's taught to resist that. You know, you talked about being, I always find it fascinating when you say you were a professional sports woman. I sort of would have loved to have met that Erika, just so that I could, you know, put those two pieces of you together, because I'm just fascinated by that. But that sense in which you have to follow a particular path, and you are taught a particular way of working, and it's sort of pushing and fighting, and maybe and the perfectionist comes out, you know, we're looking to correct flaws and, you know, be the best, rather than going, well, what would be the best version of me in this way. And yeah, and I think that sense of surrendering to the divine within ourselves.
Yes, that's very, very beautiful put. Surrender the divine in us. And I think that's why our talents are often discovered when we're very young, where we are just like not already controlled or programmed. It's just whatever it is, this divine force, like just coming to us. Yeah. And in a way, we are all geniuses then. Yeah. Because we're just in the flow with this life force, or whatever form was expressed to us. I always remember then when you speak about this professional sports, it was when I was like young and I didn't think about anything. Yeah, like this is not possible, this is not possible. I was just following my wild nature. Yeah, and I was very, very wild. Yeah. And it was just discovered as a talent. Yeah, that I was unstoppable. And this is this energy. This is also this weirding way now as a more ripened, like a woman. But this is exactly this energy of becoming so free. Yeah, just being a channel that something much higher is expressing through me. And yeah.
Well, it sounds as if maybe Galadriel in her warrioress phase would have got on incredibly well with your tennis player.
I watched some of the series, not all of them, the new Galadriel, I must admit, because she came to me through Lord of the Rings when she was more of a mature figure. She spoke to me in a different way, but yeah, the young warrioress, it's also interesting. Like you say, it's like, it's this wild self following her instincts, but she's not really able, for example, to stop her revenge streak. Like she's only focused on this revenge. She cannot just surrender, like to a higher service, or like so something higher, like Galadriel when she is more ripe, where she also shows her dark side, but then she can get herself more centered into the and now and integrate it more. Yeah, when she's younger, she cannot do it. And that's, of course, the other thing, isn't it? It's this wild thing as a young child. But when then something very painful happens, like in her case, the death of her brother, she's only run then by this revenge streak. And that can happen, isn't it? Like for me, it happens that I completely lost the higher service, of being a service to my gift, by being depressed, like not belonging anywhere, feeling separated. And that took over. And when I look back, at this part still of my journey, because we are here to gain all those experiences on Earth. At least that's my awareness so far. It doesn't stop until we die. It's all part of experience, being in this human body, and without judgment that those experiences are better or worse or something.
Yeah,
it's all part of it.
Yeah, and that sense, again with the story of Galadriel, that she had her part to play at all stages in her life, and she followed the fate thread that was pulling her at the time. And like you said, that it doesn't mean better or worse. It just means being fully expressed in the moment as yourself, and then that cycle is complete and something new grows from that, and flowers and fruits and that's the best that we can do, is to allow that flowering and that fruiting and that releasing process to happen over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I'll just sit in that for a minute as well. Now, we've talked about creativity, but I just wanted to ask you on that front, because obviously it's such an important part of your life now. Was it always there, or is it something that's flowered at this phase in your life?
The creativity, you mean?
Yeah, that creativity, not necessarily the embroidery, but that desire to work with your hands and shape.
Oh, I actually always liked it. I mean, being a professional tennis player, it's also very creative. Yeah, it's about the way how you hold the racket, and it's all also about the aesthetics and everything when I look back at it. And I think that's my fascination with the hands. And also the writing. I actually opened a philosophy cafe when I was 14. And I actually, when I look back at those, I still, until now, I've got a YouTube playlist where I tell stories and fairy tales, which started way then with like certain books like for very deep tales and everything. And also reading Siddhartha and Albert Camus and Paulo Coelho and Alchemist and things like that. It all started back then, this like very like young age, like 14, 15. And that's also my fascination to go deeper, yeah. To look deeper and to be in dialogue with other people about deep questions. And so I always had that, I think. And I always like to paint. Yeah, I always like that as well. But not in a conscious way, because we have to prioritize. If you're a professional sports person, my day was like eight hours besides school was just around sports. So I didn't really had so much time to develop my creative streak, but it has always been there actually. And especially this very high attunement, being clairvoyant. I always had helpers as a young child. Yeah, so when I was playing my best, I always had like great helpers. Like I was always connected with elves. It's like the panther was always my animal. I always wanted to be like a panther, and I was like running very quickly. Or things like that. They were always there supporting me, but in a very childlike way. Like yeah. But I think this is the real creativity, or my gift. I think what I found out through your birth runes report, that I've got a very strong energy. My soul rune is Ewas, which is the horse rune. It is this being the messenger between worlds. And then I started to recognize my gift. It's like Verdandi, she's also the messenger in past and future. She's like the center, yeah. I'm the middle, I'm the center one in my family of 3 kids, yeah. And then I started to realize, like hint, like, that's this energy of being just the messenger of those different dimensions, different worlds, different spirits. And yeah, and that's what the birth runes, the connection with my soul rune, Ewas, that's how I got to know my soul song. When I'm drumming now, I always sing Ewas. This is my rune, my Sleipnir, where I travel to different worlds, and it's a more conscious awareness of what was given to me and how to use it better and better and fine tune it every time. And so in a way, when I embroider, it's the needle, is my messenger. When I'm drumming, then it's my drum. When I connect with certain spirit guides, yeah, I'm just the messenger.
Yeah. That's what was I going to say? Yeah, let's go into the birth runes. And I'm just reminding myself, I want to come back to this idea of story and ecstatic wisdom, because we've been looking at it with Odin this month. So it'd be really nice to come back to that. But I think it is a really good time to ask you a bit more about the birth runes, because we definitely bonded, I think, when I did your birth runes reading and you had that double Ewaz, and I have a double Ewaz as well, as you know, with my lunar rune and my Odin's chariot are both Ewaz. And I agree, for me, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense in terms of that, like, as you say, being like between the worlds, being a messenger between the worlds, also that pace that sort of seems to come, that rhythm and that pace that comes with the Ewaz rune as well. And the fact that we had this shared experience of, I received my soul song before I knew my birth runes, and then I found that the word that made no sense in the soul song, which was like what I thought of as like a barbarous word, was actually my birth runes. It was all of the letters of my birth runes were there. It was just like this moment of, you know, it made so much sense to me suddenly.
Yeah.
The experience that you had of going, yeah, you know, actually they connected you to your soul song. The Ewaz rune did that for you is something that I always find so magical. And such an affirmation of the way in which the birth runes do something unique for each of us in calling us into ourselves and into our power and into that conscious understanding of patterns and like moments in our lives that suddenly make sense through them. And I know we've talked about the double Ewaz, but yeah, tell me, because you've gone on a really deep journey with the birth runes. You know, with me, we've worked one-to-one together. You've been training with me as a facilitator so that you can do birth runes readings with people as well. And I can I can feel that connection that you've talked about. But tell me a bit more about that, how that unfolded for you as you started to work with them.
Yeah, it really started with the double Ewaz, because like the sun rune is like the most active, which we perceive like in our everyday life, and that's when it started to like being very intriguing to me. This Ewaz, and then started to sing. It was a very important part of my reweaving, because I always felt like I have got no voice, and through the mobbing in the earlier years, like I always had like a stuck throat and was not able to express it. And so also singing the runes, especially my soul rune Ewaz, was very powerful for me. And also this horse energy. It's like I really feel when I chant Ewaz, when I drum it especially, I really feel like a horse. It's just, that's me. Yeah, it's this wild nature, but at the same time, if I'm with somebody, that's where the co-creation comes in, yeah? And I'm more like a messenger between people, spirits, and that's where this energy of co-creation comes in, and that's where the horse as well. If a person knows how to tame a horse, it's the most beautiful, loyal relationship which originates from that. So having this wildness, and at the same time this very deep loyalty to whatever I am in service now at the moment, or I'm a messenger to. And that's just me. That describes me beautiful. And it's just not a description. The runes, it's once we start working with them, and become portals to them, it's like, I can just feel it. It brings me always to the right, like guidance. When I'm there, or when a certain planet moves somewhere, then I connect with this energy, and it's just like feels like a magical process, but it gives me an impulse, or like shows me a sign. Or I do a shamanic journey, which you do so beautifully to each rune, and then I receive guidance, for my next step or for my next question. And it's beautiful. It's like living my own fairy tale, where I've got like all those helpers. Then I call them my Nordic gift, yeah, it becomes alive. For me, it's alive.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, and Tyr has been so helpful as my healing guide, for example. Yeah. Yeah, it's like having many helpers.
Yeah.
And there's a constant deepening because we constantly weave every fortnight through a certain rune. Then also the soul singers through the planets. We're constantly weaving through those energies, and the more we're opening ourselves up to it, the more it becomes alive. Yeah, and never stops. So for me, this eros is like, yeah, it's always being in movement and being a messenger between those different worlds.
Yeah. And I think there is something really beautiful about the sun rune energy that does call us back into ourselves. You know, mine is Laguz, and I work with it every day when I'm in the shower. I just go, oh, release everything that's not mine back into my Laguz space. And as you've illustrated so beautifully, for people who haven't worked with their birth runes before, we have 14 of them, and then we have the AC Nur, the goddesses associated with them through the hearths, and we have the gods as well. So thinking of them as being these initiatory gateways, these spirit guides, these helpers that are there for us, like this sort of constellation holding us, and that we don't need to know, you know, it's not a question of sort of intellectually knowing all of them and just, you know, reading about them and saying, yes, I know all about them. It's actually, like you say, that sort of shifting and going, oh, where am I right now in my life? What's here? How is wyrd weaving for me right now? Where are the planets right now? And how do they integrate with my unique energy, my unique experience? Where am I right now? And which one wants to come and talk to me and guide me is certainly the way that I find is the most helpful way to work with them. They've never really responded to that. I am going to work through them systematically. This one, then this one, and this one, which is why, for those of you, Erika, you're in the Trailblazer cohort for my Birth Rune Soul Journey program, which when I started it was supposed to be a we will do this rune and then we'll do this rune in an organized, like teacherly training fashion. And it was just not. They were just like, no, it's not going to happen that way. So what we've ended up with is a program that is still evolving, and that everybody who is on the program has access to the coaching sessions every month, so they can say, no, this is where I am right now. I'm going to go into this rune right now. I'm going to go and do the meditations and the journeys for this planet right now in order to access what I need at this time. And that the group is there to support them, and that the coaching is there to support them. You know, it's not a linear.
No, it's absolutely not linear. That's why I love so much, because I mean, I've got huge interest also like in all different astrology systems. Yeah, like Maya, Western astrology, like that's this endless cauldron, isn't it? Once we start, there's endless things to learn. But compared to many other, like Western astrology, for example, it's much like Western astrology, much more linear. It's like this and this and that's what I love actually about the birth runes, which is really magical. It's really like it took me into my own fairy tale, which I'm writing as I go along, by connecting to all these magical details. Yeah. And the Asignor was completely different to me. So the helping weavers of Frigg, yeah, like that opened up a new world to me, yeah. And it keeps like unraveling this magical space, like to me, like my own fairy tale. And I love that, because it's no clear answers. It's really just part of me, how much I open myself up and how adventurous I am, yeah, to invite those energies in. And it's forever unfolding, and I like it. Actually, it's non-linear at all.
No, we love a non-linear journey.
Yes, at least I do. I do. And this is also part of my liberation. I used to also be always in academic world and everything,
Mm.
and I was brought up again very linear, and so you have to do this and this to achieve results, be it in sports, be it in academic world, yeah. But this opened up to me my whole magical side, which I was always craving, yeah, since I was a little child, but nobody has given me the tools. I love it, this completely liberation which comes with it
Mm.
to my own magical powers, which I then develop, my own way of seeing, my own way of perceiving reality. Yeah, yeah, this is
Yeah.
very liberating, beautiful.
And it's a beautiful reflection. It's again, I think, something that we share, that we both come from academic backgrounds. And I know that it's something that I've had sort of over time become comfortable with, that my training programs aren't delivered in the way that, I was the head of quality assurance at a university for a long time, and it was like, these are the learning outcomes and this is how it works, and every person has to reach the same ones. And actually realizing that, certainly for me, in terms of being a spiritual trainer, it's not about everybody achieving the same learning outcomes. It's about everybody receiving what they need in the moment, and helping people who, maybe like you or like I, have been maybe a little bit sort of conditioned to go, what are the goals here, and what does it take to get an A star or whatever it is, and to actually go, this is totally irrelevant when it comes to the journey of your own soul. It is important. It's really important for us to be able to access our soulful side, to be able to access our magic. And also, coming back to your point about that sense of living a fairy tale, that life sort of treats us as if we are, I want to say on a monopoly board, maybe that's not the right, but there is a sort of, I will acquire the properties and then I will build a hotel on the top, and then I will do this, and then somebody will win and somebody will lose. And that is sort of what we're taught. And I sort of think to myself, well, I'd really like it if I was walking in a world that was full of mythic heroes, exploring their magic and doing wonderful things. And maybe that will involve monopoly boards for some people, and that's fine, but for other people it won't.
Yes.
It will be something different, and that place where those two paradigms can come together, of sort of the intellectual moving into the future, building on what's come, and the spiritual, soulful weaving, finding meaning in all sorts of different places and bringing that together, and marrying the wisdom of the head and the heart together. Is, yeah, that's the world that I want. So I'm very glad that you're part of the world.
Me too. And it's not disregarding anything. It's not judging that this is less worth. I mean, that's the beauty. If we learn to live fully surrendered, yeah, and liberated from all the control programs and everything, whatever comes to the moment is just right. And sometimes you need like complete clear action. And this is what I'm gonna do, and I have to be disciplined.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine. It's not judging, but the way at least I experienced, and I suffered from it a lot, that I was always told that that's what I have to do to be a success, or to be, either in sports or in the academic world or in a job. You have to do this and this to feel like you're contributing, that you're worth something. So that's all what I experienced. And this liberation came to reclaim my own magical powers, to opening myself up to all the spirit guides and all the ancestral supports and the unlimited helpers which are all around me. I had to liberate myself to let also the magic, this mystical, weave through me. And I think that happens with a lot of us who still live in a society where that has been suppressed. So it's a way of reclamation, and then becoming a channel, and then it's fullkommen okay. Like, it's not judging. You have to live this and this and this. It's like whatever comes up through us, it's fine. It is from a divine source because we are connected. We are,
Yeah. There is that piece about saying it's perfectly possible for somebody to receive, I think about it as like oracular wisdom, and to have a totally like logical, rational side at the same time, and for the two of those to work together and say, you know, I am able to distinguish between the two, but that also means that I'm able to appropriately work with both. Like I say, to say sometimes I do need, you know, my disciplined to-do list, this is the way forward, and sometimes I need to open up to what's possible and say, actually, is there another way? You know, what's out there, and to receive wisdom, which is the, you know, the theme that we've been working on in the half space through the course of this month has been ecstatic wisdom with Odin. And when you were talking about that sense of when we are children, maybe being so much more open, it's again something that we share. That I had a plethora of what I thought of as imaginary friends who then they held on for a long time, you know, before I was like, well, I need to be a grown-up now. And then obviously I trained in shamanism and all of these types of things, and they all came back, and it took me ages to realize they were actually almost like grown-up versions of the same beings who had been there for me as a child. I just didn't recognize them as such for a long time. But that sense in which ecstasy is that ability to step outside of oneself and to receive wisdom from that place. What speaks to you or through you around this human experience, this experience of being open to something beyond, you know, our separate bodies or sense of being separate from the world?
Yeah, I suppose it's like the aqua's energy. Like then I always become like this horse. I always imagine myself being the Odin's horse, Sleipnir, and then I can travel in all of those different dimensions, and being very playful for that. And I think ecstatic wisdom comes from literally having tools to embody it. Yeah, following our wild voice. Like that's why I'm so happy that I got to know my Ewa's energy, because I literally become then this horse, and it gives me a tool, but in an embodied way, in a centered or in a grounded way, because I consciously doing. Embroidery is also a very conscious, very grounding practice, where I also got to know through the birth runes report, like my south node is Berkana, that is this sacred feminine, which comes from my ancestors, and I got to reclaim that, to then move forwards to the north node, which is the Kenash, is this creativity. It feeds my creativity that way. And ecstatic wisdom is for me, follow my intuition, my wildness, my horse. But the wisdom is for me embodied knowledge. So it's not just gathering this and this, and knowledge. No, because I embody it, I live it, and then it becomes wisdom, and it's like living a bit like Odin, which is a wanderer and acquirer of knowledge. But he's a very wise person who embodies it, this wisdom, and not just collects it.
I think that's it's a lovely description of Odin, isn't it, that he has this sort of thirst for knowledge, but wisdom as well, and to embody it, and that he isn't just, although he does spend periods of time on the high seat receiving from Hugin and Munin, from thought and memory, he also goes out there into the world, and he finds the runes, and he sacrifices his eye, and he does all of these things in this quest for not just for wisdom, but somehow to sort of embody that, to be wisdom, get as close as he can to touching that wisdom that he's seeking, and to finding it in himself, and to merging with it, maybe, is as a way of looking at it. It is a very embodied experience that he offers us. Now, before I forget, I want to say, because we are starting to come to the end of our time, and I can see, so hello to everybody who is joining us live. I'm assuming that everybody is enjoying it, because everyone, you know, they've been hanging out and enjoying that there. But what I don't have is any questions. So if you do have questions for Erika, please do pop them in the chat box in the next few minutes, because otherwise you'll miss your opportunity. If you come later and you're watching the recording, Erika, I know obviously you're in the half space, so if people want to ask you a question, and I'll ask about how people can get in touch with you again before the end, but if they want to ask you a question about this interview, they can just put that in the chat box, can't they, and sort of say at Erika, and you'll see the comments that come up. So if anybody does have a question and you don't get the opportunity to ask it while we're still live, you can still pose your question for Erika. So, as you know, I ask my guests, and I like to ask my guests, and I've got a suspicion that I might know the answer to this, so I'm going to ask it anyway, which is your favorite rune?
Well, I mentioned it so many times, I'm sure this is your guess as well. It's Ewas and Manash, because Manash I've even got 3 times. And honestly, Maggie, I'm working with the runes, like we did talk now for many years, but only today did I realize that Erika Macy, it's Ewas, like looks like M.
Yeah.
And Macy is Manash. This is like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Another aha moment. And this is my chosen, this is still my name I've kept after, even though I'm not married anymore. Yeah, I'm originally called Stotts, but today it's like it's all Maisie is also woven in my website name. And literally only today did I realize, oh my God, my 2 runes which are the most frequent in my birth runes, they're in my name.
Yeah, they are your initials.
They are my initials.
That is amazing. No.
So, and they are right next to each other, isn't it? Like Ewas, and then comes Manash. It's just like they just belong together.
They do belong together. They're a wonderful partnership. For people who haven't done a lot of work with me, that is one of the things that we do quite a lot, is we sort of say, oh, you know, which runes partner together really, really well. And the Ewas, Manas, these sort of 2 energies of saying, yes, I can be in partnership, and in that surrender partnership moment of saying, yes, I am the channel, I'm surrendering to the rhythm, I am the horse, and then stepping into sovereignty with the Manas rune and coming from that place. It's almost like you can't fully embody the Manas energy of sovereignty unless you have taken that journey through Ewas into the ability to surrender, the ability to co-create, the ability to partner, because otherwise you go into like dominance is the word I'm looking for with your Manas rune. You know, I always find it interesting looking at which runes come before each other in the Futh and both of yours are in the last 8, so it is that synthesis of so many other things as well, which is formed so much of our discussion about taking those journeys back, weaving things in, bringing them through into expression, you know, being the Ewas rune that receives and integrates and channels, and then the Manas rune that brings that out and takes a stand. Now, it stands in your truth and in your authenticity. I'm reminded of when I went to a day with horses, and they said that the horses, because they're egoless, you know, egoless animals, when you go and work with them, if you approach them and you're coming from this place of ego, of a lack of authenticity, you might see it as, you know, I'm trying to look really good here, but I'm feeling a bit more inside. If you're uncongruent, is I think the word that the trainer said, what is in your inner state and your outer state, they will feel it, and they won't accept your leadership. And I remember thinking, oh, yeah, and I just, yeah, I was like, oh, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? And I'm just going to breathe and it's going to be fine. And I felt really centered. I did feel really centered, but my body was shaking as I went towards this horse. And I was like, oh, and I came, and the horse came, and he put his head over my shoulder and he sort of leaned in. And afterwards I spoke to the trainer, and I was like, I was really, shaking doing that. And I didn't think that the horse would respond to me because my body was shaking. And she said, yeah, but you weren't trying to hide it. You were just in the moment, and that was the authentic expression of you. If you had tried to be like, I'm going to totally control my body, and everything like that, then the horse wouldn't have responded to you. But because you allowed yourself to be in the moment, the horse felt that authenticity. And that's going right back to what we were talking about at the beginning, that sense of being authentic in yourself. I can really feel that from you, that sense of I am what I am, that beautiful partnership of Ewaz and Manas. So I would love to hear from you, and I know that everybody else will be really interested. How can they find out more about your work? How can they get in contact with you? What is out there? Please tell us the titles of your books. We would love to hear that, but also how people can contact you and find out more about you and what you do.
It's all via my website. Are all my offerings. It's like erikaamazing.me. It's all about weaving. So it's my two names woven in the title, and everything is there on the website if people want to get in touch with me.
Wonderful. So I'm going to ask you to pop your website into the chat underneath our video so that we have got that, and then when we transfer it to YouTube, we'll do the same. We can pop that in there so that people can find that as well. I've just had a little look, and we do not have any audience questions. I'm checking one more time. Sometimes it just doesn't catch up, so my apologies to anybody who has posted questions or comments if they haven't come through at all. But I know that there have been a lot of people watching. So thank you to everybody who has joined us. And thank you so much, Erika, for coming and sharing this conversation with me, and for being so generous in telling us about your experiences and your perspective and your work. It's wonderful. And this sharing of collective wisdom, I always think there is so much that the real wisdom resides in the space between people coming together. And that's why I love doing these interviews and sharing those in the group as well, because it comes through from the group too. So thank you so much, Erika. It has been an absolute pleasure and joy, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. But for now, we will sign off from our Facebook group. Thank you, everybody, for attending. It's been lovely to see you. Take care, and we will see you very soon.